Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and welcome to Season 26 of Pokemon Go Battle League. There has been a ton of move updates that just occurred, and I'm going to do my best to cover as many as I possibly can in videos on this channel. In today's video, we have to talk about Annihilape. Annihilape's fast move Low Kick just received a massive buff. Low Kick is now a fighting type clone of Metal Sound, and this gives Annihilape insanely fast pacing. 5-4 to Rage Fist, 6 to the first close combat. Annihilape doesn't have the fast move pressure that it once did, but its pacing is now horrifyingly fast. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. And in game number 1, we're off to a pretty nice start, leading Annihilape into Greninja. My opponent safe switches into Clodsire, and I could have brought in the Drapion, but I'm actually going to play it a little bit differently. My plan is basically just to use Licky as a damage sponge. I banked a ton of energy on Annihilape. I already have almost 2 Rage Fists. My goal is not to win this matchup. My goal is to try and sweep this game with Annihilape. Now you may notice that my Annihilape is intentionally the non-Shadow Annihilape. I do think that now that it's not going for fast move pressure, having the non-Shadow for extra survivability is a pretty big plus. I bring back in the Annihilape, fire off the Rage Fist, that connects onto the Clodsire. I'm going to CMP-tie them to the Earthquake. So when they throw one before the Earthquake, I realize I don't have to shield this. This is just going to be a Stone Edge. And now, look at the pacing on Annihilape. Oh my goodness. I go for an undercharge, hoping to leave them at 1 HP, but it does take the knockout. In comes Jellicent, and this trainer is about to be absolutely destroyed by Annihilape. Rage Fist gets the shield. We get to farm up almost to 2 more Rage Fists. After this next Rage Fist, I am going to be at +4 attack. Jellicent shields. The Hex does not take the knockout. And this is going to be a full one-hit KO of Jellicent. Back in comes Greninja, +4 low kicks adding up, and the damage is done. We didn't even have to use a Protect Shield in this match. Annihilape just absolutely took over. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Hopping into game number 2, picking up a pretty nice lead, Annihilape into Shadow Steelix. You're going to notice right away, Low Kick does not do a lot of fast move pressure. Annihilape has completely flipped from being a fast move pressure heavy Mon instead to a spammy Mon. We reach close combat when they make the Psychic Fangs, and that just picks up the one-hit KO. My opponent sends in Marowak, and I make a bit of a misplay. I should have brought in Licky here, but I end up accidentally sending in the Drapion. But look at this, Mudslap's damage is not what it once was. I can actually hold on in this matchup and make a second Aqua Tail, even though I was down a turn. So my opponent is forced to give up both shields, and now I can just bring in Licky to absorb energy. So Marowak, some people are still trying it, but it does not have the same convincing matchups that it once did. Bone Club lands. These Mudslaps are really not doing much. I'm very okay with letting another Bone Club go, and I have an idea. The idea is to Shadow Ball and then Low Kick down with the Annihilape, because I know that Annihilape energy is so incredibly strong. Because of the Ghost and Fighting offensive duo, I'm always guaranteed to hit at least something for neutral damage. Bone Club shielded, in the back is Galarian Corsola. This, with the old Annihilape, would be game over. They would farm me down. But look at this, the pacing on Annihilape. We make a second Rage Fist. This is just unbelievable. Annihilape almost took out an entire Corsola by itself. I was so low on HP there, and it just simply did not matter. I get that farm down, exit with the Body Slam loaded for the Marowak, and that is going to be a win. This Annihilape pacing is absolutely terrifying, and honestly, I'm a huge fan of this change. We move to game number 3, Annihilape versus Annihilape. Now, I'm running the non-Shadow Annihilape specifically for the Drapion matchup. I really value consistency across my Pokemon, so the fact that regular Annihilape, according to PvPoke Sims, can win the 2s against Shadow Drapion straight close combat because you could always survive a crunch is a really big plus. They tank the Rage Fist, I shield it, they save switch into Pelipper, and I'm going to stay in and fire off a +1 Rage Fist. This is going to do massive damage. It forces Pelipper into shielding, and now that I got the shield back, I can retreat into Licky. Licky gonna be taking a Hurricane, and this is going to hurt. However, I feel pretty comfortable absorbing that damage and going straight for the Shadow Ball. My goal is to try and leave this Pelipper pretty low, but I want to set up a perfect farm down range for the Drapion. So I undercharge the Shadow Ball slightly, and this should set up a perfect Poison Sting down. In comes Drapion. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon is Noctowl, another wing attack user that used to be top meta. Noctowl is very bulky, but its pacing is pretty bad. I'm able to land the crunch that does do some pretty significant damage, and I know that they're just not going to be able to take the knockout here with Sky Attack. Noctowl is about bulk, it's not about damage. And now I should be able to farm up to an Aqua Tail plus a crunch, and now it becomes a baiting game for my opponent. Will they call the bait? Will they shield? They shield. I cap tie with the crunch, and that is going to be good night for the Noctowl. Noctowl is going to get knocked out. I still have the Annihilape lurking, and I send it in as my opponent brings in their own. Now I just have to watch for a potential catch, so I can farm up with the Annihilape and then look to wait the turn and make sure that I see the low kick. I wait the turn, I see the low kick go through, and now I can take the knockout with the Rage Fist, and I'm healthy enough to survive their wing attacks. In comes Pelipper. It turns out I could have actually gone for a low kick down, but we're just going to take the win and fire off the Rage Fist. Rage Fist KOs the Pelipper, and Annihilape is just an absolute force of nature with this update. We move to the next match, leading Annihilape into Shadow Swampert. We have identical pacing, Rage Fist to the Hydro Cannon, they save switch into a Talonflame, and I'm more than happy to respond with Licky Licky. This is the non-Shadow Talonflame, which means it's probably on Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to do huge damage to Licky Licky, but I feel very comfortable losing switch advantage. And the reason why is my opponent had to lower their defense 3 stages to take the knockout with Brave Bird, and now I can punish that by going for a 1-shield brutal Poison Sting farm down with Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion up energy will absolutely destroy Swampert. My opponent reveals their final Pokemon is a low kick Hawlucha. This is a Pokemon that I do really want to test out, as I have a very good one for the Open Great League that I got from a trade at the Portland Regional Championships back in 2024. 2 Aqua Tails get them very, very low. I thought about catching the Flying Press, but I decide, you know what? I'll just let the Drapion go, and we'll trust in Annihilape. Annihilape gets a full low kick down. That is such an energy head start. And now my opponent just doesn't have any win cons. Annihilape is just simply too fast. Well, their only win con is to call a bait, but close combat connects. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We pick up a pretty awkward lead in the next match, Annihilape into Altaria. I'm a big believer that early on in this meta, close combat is the way to go. However, by not running Ice Punch, it does mean that this team is pretty weak to Altaria. Altaria does very well against Annihilape, and it has a very, very good matchup against Drapion. I think if I saw an Altaria lead again, I would probably just immediately save switch Licky Licky, as a lot of the time, Altaria lead teams don't have a clean answer to Licky Licky because you can't really run a fighter behind Altaria. I'm able to get a catch and sneak onto the Licky Licky, but I'm down a shield and that's really not where I want to be. My opponent sends out Empoleon. I'm going to fire off the Shadow Ball right away. A Shadow Ball will do some pretty sizable damage onto the Empoleon. When Empoleon puts up the shield, they're going to look to farm up a ton of energy. My opponent throws on pretty poor timing there as they double up, but unfortunately for them, Hydro Cannon will not take the knockout. I'm able to make the Shadow Ball, and this Shadow Ball is going to be getting them pretty low. Switch timer's up, in comes Annihilape, and I'm just looking to get some fast move pressure on this Empoleon. Empoleon does tank low kicks pretty well. They pivot back into the Altaria, but Altaria doesn't have energy, so I can double up on the Rage Fist. Again, this pacing is incredible, and now I just exit with a boosted Rage Fist for whatever my opponent has in the back. They send in Shadow Drapion, and this will be a very tricky game. I build up to the back-to-back Rage Fist, CMP tie close combat to their Aqua Tail. Close combat does get the shield. I'm going to get knocked out, and I think this game I'm probably going to need to catch if I want a chance to win. I believe their Empoleon is 3 away from a Hydro Cannon, and I'm definitely not going to be able to Poison Sting down the Steel type. So I fire off the Aqua Tail, that's going to connect. My opponent ends up under tapping, and this damage is guaranteed to land. We're going to make the Aqua Tails at the exact same moment. I don't know who wins charge attack priorities, so we go for the catch and catch onto the very low HP Licky Licky. Now I just have to watch for a switch into Empoleon. There it is. I'm able to farm up 3 because switching takes a turn, outpacing them by 1 singular turn. Aqua Tail takes the knockout. We have the energy needed to outpace the Shadow Drapion, and that game is going to be a win. Shadow Drapion, early days of this season, felt incredible to use. It feels like a very nice core pairing with the Annihilape. Great lead in the next match, Annihilape into Furret. Furret's going to be safe switching into Jellicent, and I just get to bank all of this energy and then go Licky Licky. This is going to put my opponent in such an incredibly bad spot. Because all their Jellicent energy, they have a huge head start. It doesn't really go very far against Licky Licky, and I banked Annihilape energy. And with how fast Annihilape is able to generate energy thanks to low kick, Annihilape, once it gets up energy, oftentimes just feels completely unstoppable in a lot of games. Surf is going to connect. My opponent takes advantage of the desync of the timers with a very nice catch onto Furret. Shadow Ball onto the Furret is going to be double resisted, but now I can bring back in the Annihilape. I farm up just shy of the back-to-back close combats. Close combat easily going to be erasing Furret from the field of play. And if they send back in the Jellicent, well, I have energy for this Jellicent. I get to fire off the Rage Fist. I'm double debuffed, but the Hexes are still not doing a lot. My opponent plays to a CMP tie that they do not win. Even if they went for the farm down, they were still going to be in trouble, but playing to that CMB tie instantly ends the game. It doesn't matter what my opponent has in the back, there is just no way for them to win. In comes the Drapion, I shield up the Surf, and I should be able to take the knockout with the Aqua Tail. My opponent throws a bad manners Shadow Ball. They have Annihilape of their own in the back, as they realize there is just no path forward for them in this game. Crunch connects, and now we see that the regular Annihilape tanks that very, very comfortably. I'm always going to be shielding up, respecting a potential close combat. They go for it, as that's their win con, and they're going to concede the match. Hopping into the next game, Annihilape into Florges. This is a very bad lead. I'm just going to safe switch out of here into the Shadow Drapion. My opponent is going to respond with Corviknight, but Drapion up energy is actually very fine against Corviknight. Corviknight will be going straight Air Cutter, fishing for the boost, but they do not get it. I'm very close to the back-to-back crunches, and Crunch does come pretty close to two-shotting. Crunch lands, we do not get a Crunch debuff, but my opponent is already into the yellow HP. I fire off Crunch number 2, hoping my opponent does not know their matchups, but they do as they no-shield. However, I really need switch advantage, so I'm going to shield and go for an incredibly aggressive Poison Sting down. Corviknight does not get the move, and the Poison Sting down of the Steel Flying type pays off. Back in comes Florges, but Drapion is loaded. Aqua Tail gets the shield. I have another Aqua Tail as well, and if they try and farm down, they're going to be taking some pretty significant Poison Sting damage as well. They no-shield that one. They've lost almost 3/4 of this Florges as I send in the Licky Licky. Licky Licky, very comfortable absorbing this energy, and I'm just going to under-tap the Body Slam because I want damage on the Florges. My opponent catches onto a Kingdra, and this is a certified day 1 of the season moment, seeing a Kingdra in the Open Great League. Kingdra is a very strong limited metamon, but in the Open Great League, unfortunately, it really can't do much. I farm up to the close combat, get the shield with the Rage Fist, and now that I'm boosted, this game is over. Very easy outrage shield into landing of the close combat. My opponent's actually on Octazooka. Even if they got the debuff, it wouldn't matter. Close combat was still absolutely taking the knockout. Close combat lands. Back in comes the Florges. My opponent playing it out to the bitter end, but I still have basically a full HP Licky Licky, and they don't really have any HP remaining on the Florges. So we send in the Licky Licky. They're still firing off a last-second charge attack, refusing to get KO'd. But Trailblaze, not going to cut it. Licky Licky rollouts down and takes the win. Annihilape into Talonflame in the next match. This is a bad lead, so I can safe switch into Drapion. It's very important to safe switch immediately into the Drapion because then you can just strictly outpace them, and when you fire off the Aqua Tail, it's always going to be on perfect charge stack timing. Talonflame should look to try and ramp up here with the Flame Charge, but the fact that they're not at the Shadow Talonflame means that they don't hit very hard. My opponent sends in Goodra, and Goodra, it just really doesn't do a lot of damage with Aqua Tail and Thunder Punch, so I feel pretty comfortable playing this out. My opponent actually gets a Crunch debuff, which should hopefully help me go for the low kick down. While low kick has insanely fast energy generation, it really doesn't do a lot of damage. So here, I'm definitely helped by the fact that I got the Crunch debuff. My opponent is actually running Power Whip, and that is a big problem for Annihilape. Back in comes the Talonflame. I farm up to the back-to-back Rage Fists. The second Rage Fist should guarantee the shield. My opponent makes a misplay of shielding the first, and now I send in Licky Licky. I'm going to fire off Body Slam, even though this won't knock out. If they want to throw their move, then the rollout will KO, and then they just don't have a Talonflame anymore. And that way, I have a move loaded on Annihilape, and I have basically a full HP Licky Licky, and it's Jellicent in the back. And there is just nowhere for Jellicent to go against this backline. Shadow Drapion and Licky Licky, part of the reason they're on this team is because they do such a good job of shutting down Jellicent. We've seen Annihilape in this video take down some Jellicents of its own, but it's always nice to have like some very hard counters to Pokemon that your lead are weak to. So they go for the Surf, and Licky Licky just simply does not care. I debated switching into the Annihilape and taking the knockout with my loaded Rage Fist, but I figured it was probably easiest just to end the game as quickly as possible. Hopping to the final match, leading Annihilape into Shelgon. This is a Pokemon that I'm pretty excited to try because Shelgon has access to the newly reworked Twister. I'm not messing around though. I'm not throwing a Rage Fist here. I'm going straight for the close combat. Close combat, massive damage. It connects onto the Shelgon. Shelgon will return fire with the Twister, but I get a pretty comfortable one shield farm down and exit very close to a move. In comes Jellicent, and I can already get some pretty nice damage onto the Jellicent with this Rage Fist before I pivot out. Rage Fist lands, I send in the Shadow Drapion, and now Shadow Drapion is going to make life very uncomfortable for Jellicent. If Jellicent stays in, my plan is to go for an Aqua Tail bait, because a Jellicent with a loaded Surf is always going to want to respect the crunch and hold the energy. So I'm going to go for the Aqua Tail bait. It helps my pacing just a little bit, and my opponent reveals their final Pokemon is Empoleon. Now this is a day 1 of the season moment because their Empoleon is not on the correct fast move. their Empoleon is on Metal Claw. Very important to make sure that you're on Metal Sound and not Metal Claw, but either way, we are just strictly winning here. Clock's up, in comes Annihilape, the low kick pressure forces out a Drill Peck, and then I can just roll out down with the Licky Licky. Licky Licky farms down Empoleon, and for one final time, my opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. I had so much fun already in day one of the new season. I really like the fact that Annihilape has kind of been converted from a Pokemon that would just kind of 2-shield farm things down to now it's more of a hyper-offensive Pokemon. It doesn't have that same degen fast move pressure, but what it does have is blindingly fast pacing and an ability to inflict neutral close combats incredibly quickly. The fact that it's 10 low kicks to a Rage Fist plus close combat double up is incredibly fast pacing. It reminds me a lot of Primeape, but with the big advantage being you are a ghost fighting type instead of just a straight fighting type. Not only does the Ghost subtyping give you same type attack bonus on those Rage Fists, but it also offers some very nice resistances for Annihilape that Primeape unfortunately does not have. So for me, a day one winner of this new season is Annihilape. Now, one thing that I do want to clarify, currently I believe close combat is better on Annihilape. Just the ability to threaten a close combat neutrally so fast is a really big plus. If the meta ends up adjusting heavily to like an Altaria or a Gliscor heavy meta, then Ice Punch could potentially have some merit, but for now in day number one, I'm a very big believer in close combat. Since you don't have the fast move pressure anymore, you need a way to inflict massive pressure shields down, and that's exactly what close combat can do. There were quite a few games, whether it was a Shelgon, it was a Steelix, people were saying, oh, Annihilape farmed up 6, I don't have to shield, and then just getting destroyed by a close combat. So I had so much fun with this team. Licky Licky, it's just always going to be good. It has incredible pacing. It is an amazing generalist. And we knew from last season to this season that Licky Licky was always going to stay good. I really like Licky Licky as a presence of bulk on this team because Annihilape and Shadow Drapion are not considered the bulkiest Pokemon around, so really having a Mon that can function well without shields is a really big plus. And as for Shadow Drapion, a lot of Pokemon the Shadow Drapion really didn't like to see got nerfed. We have the Mud Slap nerf, the Bullet Punch nerf on Shadow Scizor, and that made Shadow Drapion feel incredibly strong to use. Now, if Drapion usage ends up getting too high, I could definitely see people adjusting to this meta trend, but on day one, Shadow Drapion, even though it didn't get an update, Shadow Drapion is still the exact same Pokemon that it is last season. I think the meta conditions around it have become more favorable. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to have a bunch of videos this week, probably at least 2 videos per day testing out new Mons. So if you enjoyed today's video, please do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.